Hi there, Ken Pretty here. I'm coming to you from my humble little studio in Richmond, Virginia. You might be aware that last month there was a meeting at Kirkmont that included Dan and Ed and myself, and we were just touching base in an attempt to sort of wrap things up after this 1 year that we've been working together in partnership. What we talked about was this transition. We're at the point where we're transitioning from Kirkmont being involved with the Go Center in a formal way to more of an informal relationship where you folks are now going to be guiding yourselves through revitalization. Now, just so you'll know, I'm always available. You can find me. It's not difficult. Everyone has access to me via phone, via email, via text, whatever it takes. So it's not like the Go Center and Ken Pretty are going away. It's just that we're not going to be in this formal relationship. But feel free to call on me as needed. Now, when we met last month, Dan and Ed had a list of things to talk about, and we'll start there. First item was the four disciplines, and the particular question was, how do the four disciplines interface with the matrix, particularly that upper level of the matrix that deals with discipleship? You know, we have the three levels of outreach, building to evangelism, building to discipleship. So what's the relationship between the four disciplines and discipleship? Well, the four disciplines, by way of reminder, we're talking about preemptive prayer, we're talking about basic Bible, cost commitment, and missional multiplication. Well, what I want to suggest to you is that whatever methodology or program or study guide, however you approach discipleship in whichever area of ministry in the church, make sure that these four components, these four disciplines, are folded into the content of discipleship. So what we're attempting to do is across the boards develop a congregation that is a congregation of prayer, a congregation of the Bible, a congregation that is willing and able to make a high level of commitment to Christ, a commitment to the church, a commitment to reaching the community, commitment to the Great Commission, and a congregation that is dialed into this idea of missional multiplication, that we're not simply content to be a local church that is more or less inwardly focused, but that we're constantly looking outward to the harvest. We are taking the Great Commission seriously, and we are endeavoring to be Great Commission people. You might recall that when we talked about the Great Commission, one of the things I emphasized was the idea of obedience, because the Great Commission tells us that we are to teach people to obey or observe what Christ has commanded. So obedience is central to the Great Commission. So obedience should be central to our approach to discipleship, as opposed to discipleship that's focused simply on acquiring knowledge of one sort or another. Knowledge is fine as far as it goes, but it doesn't go far enough. Being obedient to that knowledge is really what separates the truly committed from those who are just giving lip service to being committed to the Great Commission. Now, one distinction I'd like to make in this regard is the distinction between the function of the vision team in regard to the disciplines versus the function of the disciplines, the function of the vision team in regard to the matrix, the Great Commission matrix. When it comes to the disciplines, we are expecting the disciplines to be something that transcends any given ministry area or department or program of the church, but something that penetrates into all levels. And we want the vision team to be behind the wheel, making that happen, making the decisions, looking for ways to build prayer, Bible, commitment, and multiplication into the life of the church. Now, that's different from the role of the vision team as it relates to the matrix. The role there is for the vision team to train others in how to develop their particular part of the matrix, meaning their particular vertical column, the column that relates to their ministry area. So in this case, the vision team is acting in a training role, training others to fill in those little boxes with strategies and the tactics that go along with them, rather than trying to provide them from the vision team and completely filling out the matrix. So the vision team is directly involved in the strategies and tactics of moving the disciplines forward, but indirectly involved as trainers in making the matrix flesh out through all of the different ministry areas. In speaking about the matrix, one of the things we talked about last month was this idea of narrowing the matrix. In other words, despite the fact that obviously I'm a big fan of the matrix, and I would love to see a time when every ministry area of the church is actually functioning through the matrix. It's unrealistic and a bit daunting to think that that could happen in every single ministry area all at once from the very beginning. So the idea of narrowing the matrix would be to narrow down the ministry areas that are going to embrace the matrix at the front end. Maybe 2, maybe 3 or 4 at the most. And after those are up and running, then move on to the next and the next and the next. And over a period of time, we get to the point where all ministries of the church are functioning through the Great Commission matrix. One of the questions that came up was the question of what exactly is a successful Go project? What does that look like? Well, here's the thing. As I think you know, the Go project typically engages the Go Center with a local church for roughly 2 years. And we've tried to do that with Kirkmont in 1 year. So it's even a tighter frame of timing. Here's the deal. It's not going to happen in such a way that, say, in 12 months or even 24 months, that any church is going to be absolutely, completely revitalized. That's not the bullseye. That's not the objective of the Go project. The objective is this, that at the end of the formal relationship between the Go Center and a given church, that a revitalization culture centered on the Great Commission has been firmly established in the church, such that it can continue into self-guided revitalization. So the point is not that you have completed revitalization at this point. The point is that a revitalization culture has been firmly rooted into the daily goings-on of Kirkmont, such that you can continue to revitalize without direct involvement with the Go Center. Now, the last thing on the Kirkmont list had to do with the vision narrative. And from my perspective, what I want to introduce to you is a video that's titled Go Talk. You know, obviously we've stolen this concept from TED Talks, but this Go Talk is titled How to Discern, Develop, and Declare Vision. You will find this Go Talk on our website, gocenterinfo.com. You go to that website and you click on Books, Media, etc., and just scroll down until you find this particular video. You click that on, and a great deal of information will be delivered in regard to discerning, developing, and declaring vision. Now, this video lasts about 22, 23 minutes, something of that sort. So, it's not a massive undertaking to listen through to this video. One highlight that I would share with you from that video is that our approach to vision statements is that churches will develop 3 tiers, T-I-E-R-S, 3 tiers of video statement. The first one being the story, which is a full, comprehensive narrative of the church's vision, say 3 to 5 years down the line. Secondly, the synopsis, which is 1 or 2 paragraphs that capture the heart of the narrative. And then finally, the slogan. This is the catchphrase, the tagline, the short, pithy phrase that would be kind of your bumper sticker representation of the full vision statement. Now, much more about this is said when you take a look at the video. So, moving on, during our conversation last month, I brought a Go Center list to the table. And I want to share briefly some of the things in regard to my list. First of all, this role of the vision team as trainer. Now, I've already touched on that. This specifically refers to the role of the vision team in regard to the matrix. You are trainers training others in how to utilize the matrix. In an indirect role. You are in more the coaching role, not the doing role, in terms of fleshing out the matrix. Secondly, I just wanted to share with you something that comes our way from another presbytery, the implementation team model. The Presbytery of the Alleghenies uses this model. I mentioned this to Dan and Ed last month, but I'll mention it again to you guys. The implementation team model is a concept where the vision team, having reached this point, is allowed to perhaps step back from the implementation side of the Go project, turning that over to yet a different team, a new team. This is certainly optional. I'm just mentioning it because it is being used successfully in the Alleghenies. What they have found is that sometimes you reach a point with a vision team where folks have been committed and been active for a sustained period of time and simply need to step back. And another team is raised up. The baton is passed and the implementation team takes it from there. So I just offer that as something to consider. It's not really a recommendation on my part. I'm just sharing this as information. Now, when it comes to implementation or execution, there is a model that I have come across that I really appreciate. And it's referred to as the 4DX model of execution. It comes from a book, and I just happen to have one here, The 4 Disciplines of Execution. And I want to recommend this to you as a model for execution. Now, this could be a model that the vision team utilizes for itself, as well as a model that the vision team recommends for others to use. And I want to walk you quickly through these 4 disciplines. The first one being the focus on the wildly important. They refer to this as WIGs, wildly important goals. We focus on the wildly important. In other words, we don't spread ourselves too thin by trying to focus on too many things. We narrow the field down to what is truly important. Secondly, that we act on the lead measures. One of the reasons that I'm so high on this particular model is their distinction between what they call lead measures and lag measures. A lead measure would be something that is undertaken that actually leads to the objective that you're trying to reach, your WIG, your wildly important goal. A lag measure is more of something that follows your pursuit of an objective. And their observation is that most organizations, and I would argue that most churches, tend to focus on lag measures while missing the lead measure. So let me give you an example. Let's say that a given church has an objective of developing, let's say, 12 small groups. And maybe at the time that this objective is articulated, the church is operating with, say, 4 small groups. So the idea is to move from 4 to 12 small groups, and let's say over a period of a year. Well, what churches tend to do is to simply identify, reaching the goal of 12 small groups within that time frame. So the goal might be stated as something like this: add 8 small groups by this time next year. Now, the 4DX model would call that a lag measure. In other words, identifying that objective does nothing to cause that objective to be reached. It's a lag measure. It's not a lead measure. A lead measure would be something like this. Identified, recruited, trained 8 new small group leaders, let's say 3 months in to the 12. So 3 months in, we will have identified who the leaders are going to be. You see, that's a lead measure, because in order to have additional small groups, we have to have additional leaders. So developing those leaders would be a lead measure. Locating 8 locations to host these additional meetings would be a lead measure. These are contributing to the overall objective actually happening. So we have lead measures, we have lag measures, and the 4DX model emphasizes this action that's taken on lead measures. So let's move to number 3. Keep a compelling scoreboard. One of the things that 4DX emphasizes is that there be a real-time, constantly updated scoreboard that shows what kind of progress we're making. So, for example, if we were talking about developing 8 additional leaders, for example, we're going to track, when the first one is recruited, the second, the third, etc. When they're trained, we're going to be keeping track of where we are. We're not going to wait to the end to see if we hit the objective. We're going to track our progress along the way. I use this example in explaining this. When my son was playing for the U.S. national volleyball team, during that run between the 04 Olympics and the 08 Olympics, the particular coach that was in charge in those days kept a compelling scoreboard. One of the things that he would do is that at every practice, the courts would be lined with blackboards, and all throughout the practice, statistics were being kept in real time. So, for example, if the team was working on, say, a hitting drill or a serving drill, records are being kept as to what your particular performance was in that particular drill. So every player had the ability to just look to the sideline at any moment and see how good a practice he was having during that particular practice session. And so there was this constant feedback loop that was saying to the players, here's how well you're doing today. Here's where you're falling short. Here's where you need to step up. Here's how your performance compares with everyone else's. Now, that's a little intense, okay? I'm not suggesting we go quite to that depth. But the idea is that we're always aware of where we are as we're working through these lead measures en route to reaching those lag measures. And then finally, there is the idea of creating a cadence of accountability. There needs to be an awareness of what our performance level is. How well are we doing? Are we getting closer and closer to our goals, or are we not? So, bear these four in mind. I think they are very significant. I'm particularly drawn to disciplines 2 and 3, acting on lead measures and keeping the compelling scoreboard. And see if this methodology doesn't prove helpful for you. Now, let's get back to my Go Center list. You know, we've already talked about the vision team role as trainer, the implementation team model. We just looked at the 4DX model of execution. And last but not least, I just want to inform you about another video, also found on our website, gocenterinfo.com, under books, media, etc. How to cast vision and create ownership. One thing that's very, very significant is the understanding that if we don't get people involved with our vision is not going to go anywhere. So it's very important that we ramp up our efforts to cast vision to our existing congregation and develop ownership within our existing congregation, as well as think through the strategies and the tactics of how we are going to cast vision with newcomers that come into the church and how we're going to gain ownership from them. We need people in order to make vision happen. So, you know, we're creating kind of an upward spiral here. We have a vision of reaching people. As we reach people, not only do we share the gospel, but we share the vision and we share ownership of the vision. And as those folks that we have reached become part of our team, they then are ready to reach someone else. And over time, this scales up, it levels up so that our impact, our influence in the community grows and grows and grows. Particularly influence and impact as it relates to bringing people to Christ, bringing them to the gospel, bringing them into the church. So it's been a real pleasure for me working with you over this last year. And again, if you need me, you know where to find me, and I'd be happy to continue working with you down the line. If you should decide that you want to extend our formal relationship, we can certainly do that in increments of 6 months. So if that's your desire, just let me know anywhere along the way, and we will make that happen. Meanwhile, God bless you. Amen.